Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I want to do a quick little overview of this little guy. This is the Douglas lighter, and it's a very, very interesting little thing. I want to thank my buddy Jim for sending this, as well as a couple of EDC lighter options along. Let's do a quick little size comparison here. Of course, this is your Spyderco Delica for a sense of scale. This right here is a just conventional, boring sort of lighter that you see everywhere. This is a Zippo sort of affair. And what else here? Oh, here's a Sharpie marker. So you get a sense of the size of this guy. It's not very big. It's not very thick. But, there you go. This is also using just your regular Zippo, or I believe your Roncinol sort of fuel. And one thing I want to point out on lighter reviews, I don't smoke unless I'm on fire. So I don't really have a whole lot of use except outside of, like, utility sorts of things. Like, lighting candles or lighting a hand warmer, something along those lines. So if you're a smoker, you may have a very different experience with this than I do. So, at some level, what the heck do I know about lighters? But let's go ahead and just talk about the good and the bad, because this is just going to be a quick review. On the good side, this guy is pretty well sealed, all told. This will keep the fuel in it for a long time, unlike your conventional Zippo lighters, which will run out of fuel relatively quickly after filled. Another thing that's nice is that it just takes a standard fuel, like your Zippo fuel. You just pour it in the back here. One other thing to point out is that it has a little reserve tank in here. This little cap, actually, if you unscrew this portion of the cap, there is additional fluid in there, basically. So even if you run out, you can pour this into there, and then suddenly you'll be okay. And then inside here is yet another cap that includes, that's hiding a spare flint. So even if you run out of one of the items, you've still got something for that day, which is nice on a sort of survival standpoint, I suppose, or just carrying one with you every day. Even if you run out of fuel in the main thing, you'll be okay for that day until you get home. So that's kind of a nice thing. Next thing, this guy is really designed to work in watery situations. Everything is very sealed up. I'll show you how you actually unseal it here. You turn this little guy, and then you pop it open. And actually, I'll shut it, and that way you can see. On the inside here, there's this little cap here, and then there's the wick. And when this guy is sealed shut, this cap goes over the wick entirely, so the wick really cannot get wet. It is sealed in that way, so that's kind of a beautiful thing. And similarly, the flint striker is sealed up as well, so that's nice. It's got a nice safety mechanism on it too, I'll say. I like this little ritual of popping this guy open and closed. Like I said, I haven't used it all that much, but still, it's not going to trigger in your pocket in any way, shape, or form, unlike something like this might, where if you sit on it, it's just going to vent gas for, an hour or two until it's dead. This guy's not opening unless you really make an effort to open it. It's kind of nice in that way. And then finally, I gotta say, this is kind of a beautiful object in and of itself. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like, I don't know, it's kind of got a bit of an old world charm to it. It's got panache. It's got a nice kind of chromy finish to it. It's relatively compact. It looks like a telescope or something nautical. And if you go online, you'll see that there are actually a variety of different lighters along these lines. And, so you can get a bunch of different styles with it. But, I mean, this is a lighter that's got a lot of panache. If you take this guy out of your pocket to light a candle, that's one thing. If you take this guy out, it's a very, very different thing. So that's really what's good about this guy. It's a gorgeous object in many ways. It's got a nice safety mechanism. It works in watery situations. You've got a fair amount of fuel capacity, a reserve tank with an extra flint, and it just takes a standard sort of fuel and holds on to it for a little while. Let's talk about what's not so great about this guy. So on the bad side, it is a little bit on the slow to deploy side. If you've got it in the safe mode to put it in your backpack or your pocket or whatever, and then you need to deploy it, first you need to twist, and then reposition it in your hand and fire. Oh, didn't quite. There we go. And then fire it. And so that's not necessarily ideal. It's fine for me, who uses a lighter fairly rarely. But if you're doing this 50 times a day, that might get annoying. Speaking of things that are a little annoying if you're doing them often, just in playing with it and in trying to use it, in my experience, it can be a little inconsistent to light. You actually just saw that a second ago. Damn it. You really need to make sure you're firing it with a lot of force. It's something I'm sure I'd get better with over time, but it does, I don't know, it's a little bit frustrating in that way. Maybe 70% of the time I get a good light, maybe 80. There we go. And if you get it wrong, you need to pop it back shut again, and then do it again. Not the end of the world, but something to keep in mind. Something that's more annoying to me is the fact that most of the flame is actually occurring in this little space down here. This is tough to show from above, but you can see here that you don't get a lot of usable flame outside of that cylinder area. Unlike on a lighter that's a little bit more conventional, where you can use the lighter kind of sideways to light a candle or something along those lines. This isn't going to work with that sort of a situation. Even with like your little Zippo hand warmer, which is what I use a lighter for most often, honestly. A lighter like this, where you can actually hold the flame up to something, is a much better choice than this guy where it's really obstructed. And, of course, none of these will hold a candle to a full-on torchy sort of lighter, but that's a completely different sort of thing. Another thing that's really, really unpleasant about this guy is that if you leave this guy lit for any period of time, this section up here really does heat up pretty seriously, to the extent where if you leave this guy open for a little while, you're not going to want to put this guy straight back into your pocket. That's pretty ugly. I really, that's not a great design. Having this much shroud around it, I can understand why that would make sense from a windproof perspective, but it's just not great. So this is only really usable for a very short period of time, or with a fair amount of cooldown. And then finally, on the bad side, these guys go for 80 to 100 bucks, and that's a lot of money. That's a huge amount of money to spend on something you're not, well, maybe you'll use it every day. If you smoke, then sure. But, this is not something that's, well, it's way too expensive to buy just for art. So let's talk quick conclusion here. Look, final conclusion, I love this as a sculpture. As a piece of functional industrial design, this is a great thing, and in many ways, it's a smart little design. Unfortunately, though, it's not a great lighter, in my experience. I mean, you can get it to light, but there were limitations here. And so, ultimately, I really do wish that this were a lot more functional, because it is really, really awesome, and that's kind of fun. So, there you go. That's the conclusion. It's a beautiful object. It's a great functional sculpture, but I'm not necessarily sure that this is what I would buy as a lighter. There you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.